You're listening to episode 216 of Mitolife Radio. I'm your host, Matt Blackburn, and today I'm interviewing Amanda Carniero. Amanda is a functional nutritional therapy practitioner and personal trainer. She focuses on weight loss for women and improving metabolic health. She shares her personal weight loss journey after being 20 to 30 pounds overweight. She shares her philosophy around macronutrient ratios and calories. She challenges the body positivity movement. What happens to your metabolic rate when you lose fat? Her thoughts on continuous glucose monitors. If it's necessary to eat every 2 hours. I get her thoughts on fiber, intermittent fasting, and then she answers listener questions, including hemoglobin A1C, how to kill sugar cravings, thoughts on cold therapy, specifically for women, how to get started on keto, how does less frequent alcohol drinking affect the gut, and her best electrolyte supplement. So enjoy the show. Here is Amanda Carniero. All right, we're here with Amanda Carniero. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going?
Great. I'm excited. We haven't chatted since the Bulletproof conference. Was that like 5-6 years ago? Something crazy.
It's got to be at least that. Yeah. It's probably like 20. I feel like it was like 2018, but could be maybe not so long ago.
Yeah. I think I was standing with a couple friends and then you were rushing past and it seems like you were headed somewhere, maybe to use a hyperbaric chamber or something. I don't know.
I have no idea. I do remember that. And I remember you, if I recall correctly, I think you just started eating like animal products again after that. And I remember you asking, we were like, had a conversation about bone broth. Because I think that was like probably the first introduction for you.
Yeah, I tried really hard to make the whole, even vegetarian thing work. I kind of gave up on veganism and then did the eggs and milk and stuff. And yeah, still didn't feel ideal on that. So it was like kind of breaking the religion, you know?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, because that's how it is, right? It's like, it's not just the way you eat. It's a complete identity.
Yeah. And same with like all these diets and I'm not anti-diets anymore because I see them as tools and it seems interesting. I kind of promoted this message the last couple of years and just recently within a few months stopped that, avoid all diets. But it's like, the keto diet was developed for epilepsy patients, which I've experienced in my family firsthand. It's very scary. It's very traumatizing. It's very emotional. And so to have a dietary tool that actually essentially treats this really debilitating condition, why demonize that,
Yeah. And we all have a diet, right? Like the word diet is like just, demonized, but we all have a diet. We all eat certain things. And I think there's an opportunity and a way to use it that works for you. And until it stops working for you, and I also think like I don't think there's like one diet that you are going to thrive on for the rest of your life, right? Like I think there's, especially like in traveling, you're going to want to maybe experiment with different things or change things up based on where you're living, your goals, your current health at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I look at the carnivore diet and some people have asked me if I'll ever try that. And I'm like, that seems like the most difficult one socially, because like last night I went out and had steelhead, oysters, but then some nice like vegetables like broccolini and some, rice pilaf or whatever it was. And I just ate it all because it was an experience. So to just, limit yourself all the time. That's a good point. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And food is so social, and I think that is where it becomes hard for people. And this is why people can't really stick to one thing. And then they feel like a failure because they can't stick to something. But really, it's just a matter of maybe loosening the grip and not having to do everything 100% or go to any extreme, really.
Right. But maybe would you recommend going to the extreme if someone's dealing with a really debilitating condition where it's affecting multiple aspects of their life? Then they probably should, clench down and going out to eat and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's always a case for that, right? And even if like you have a goal, maybe during a specific period of time, you are a little bit more strict with what you're consuming. And I think that's totally fine too. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Because we also run into this like issue with like, oh, you should never really look at, there's some people who are like, just eat and don't worry about it and like, don't stress about it. Well, if you do that, you're also going to probably lead yourself into some health issues too. So yeah, for sure. I think you can absolutely do that. You can be in an extreme in some periods of time, and then in other times you can loosen up a little bit.
So we should probably begin with how you got started. So how did you get interested in this whole topic of nutrition?
I kind of fell into nutrition kind of accidentally, I guess. I had moved to Los Angeles from the East Coast in, I guess, like 2005. And I, at the time, was pursuing an acting career. And I was just really looking for a job where I could make some good money and have a flexible schedule. And a friend of mine was a personal trainer. And she was like, oh, you should become a personal trainer. And I was like, no, just like, I don't want to be this like person in the gym all the time. Not interested in that. But then for some reason, I was like, okay, you know what? I might as well just try. So I got certified as a personal trainer. I started training clients. And then I think I just saw the benefit of exercise and the benefit of transforming your body. Because at the time too, I was, I don't know, probably like 20, 30 pounds overweight. And also didn't realize how unhealthy I was. I was on a standard American diet and I was trying, doing the quote unquote healthy things, but none of that was really working for me. So as I started training clients and started learning more about not only exercise, but also nutrition, I basically transformed my body. And with that came a lot of other transformations, just in terms of like, I felt better about myself. I was more productive. I had more energy. We can look at the surface level of it, like, okay, my body has transformed, but at the same time, I transformed a lot of my relationships in my life too. And so for me, it was a tool to not only improve my body, but also improve my life. And so through that, I just became more and more interested in nutrition, started pursuing that a little bit more. And it's like all I wanted to talk about with my clients. And I recently, in the last few years, pulled out of personal training. I do that with my clients, just online training. I create programs for them. But the nutrition aspect is a bit more interesting and nuanced for me. So that's kind of where I am at now. And it continues to evolve as it does.
Yeah, absolutely. But you were never a fan of, or you never experimented with like white sugar or high carb, it seems like, right?
Well, not really white sugar, although even when I was vegan, I wasn't doing high carb because I was, maybe actually definitely higher carb than I am now. And I did have a time period of veganism where I was doing like a quote unquote healthy vegan diet with whole foods, but I was eating like a lot of fruits. But yeah, I don't think it was high carbs. I was also doing like a lot of like nuts as well, like nuts and seeds. And
so you weren't like 80-10-10 Douglas Graham fruitarian.
No, I don't think that could ever really work for me.
Yeah.
No.
Are there a lot of people, because you're in Costa Rica, I think that in Hawaii are like two of the fruitarian meccas, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like you meet people for a coffee or a juice, and it's like just like there's a cafe here, and all it has is like smoothie bowls, and you just see people it's just like fruit on granola, on peanut butter, and I'm like, how are these people? But I also think in this climate, you can probably get away with that a little bit more. and people are very active here. Some people, but I know for me that doesn't work well. I can get away with that sometimes, but for sure I'd be like needing a nap an hour later.
Right. Well, I've been reading about fatty liver recently, and I wasn't formally diagnosed, or I didn't get testing done, but looking at symptoms that I've had, I kind of suspect that I gave myself that. And just from being high carb, it wasn't maple syrup or, white sugar. I think it was just eating simply any source of carbs. I was, 300 to 400 grams a day for the last couple of years. But what I learned is mixing fat with sugar in the same meal, that they compete, right? And so some people say whether you're high carb and low fat or high fat and low carb, either one could work for weight loss because you're not contributing to fat storage. Would you tend to agree with that? Or
yeah, in studies it shows like when protein is equated, so protein needs to be high. So that is number one, but you can play around with the fat and carbohydrates that you're consuming as long as you're not over consuming calories. So you can be high fat, and that works for a lot of people, or you could also be high carb. The only issue with high carb is you really don't want to go too low on fat because that can cause hormonal issues. So either one could work, or you could also do moderate fat and moderate carb, and that seems to work well too. I tend to have the approach of like, as long as you're eating enough protein and as long as you're getting enough fat for your hormones, you can really eat whatever else you want that works for you and that you enjoy. But then you also have to just like check in with how that is going for you, because I think you can be like, well, I really like carbs, so I'm going to eat all the bread and, have enough fat. But at the end of the day, like if you're not active enough to be using those carbs can be causing you issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's what I've been meditating on a lot. How some people they are sedentary by nature of office work. And so to recommend a high carb diet to someone that sits at an office for, 6, 7, 8 hours a day, that probably going to gain some weight, right?
Or just not even, and even if they can control their calories, they might not feel good in the process of doing that. So yeah, people who work in an office, people who like never see the sun shine the whole day. And then also in the wintertime, you're also not going to be utilizing carbs very well, especially like when carbs are growing nowhere around you and yet people are eating them all day long. I don't recommend that either.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why a lot of people live in Southern California or Austin, Texas. A lot of people are moving there, these sunny locations, Hawaii, because you can eat more carbs, right? I think that was like the Jack Cruz thing, that the more sunlight you get, to a degree, they recommend kind of unlimited exposure, which I kind of caution against. But the more photons you're getting from the sun, the more carbs you can metabolize, which kind of makes sense. I mean, I'm looking out at an expanse of snow as far as I can see, and there's not going to be any huckleberries for another, 3-4 months. So
yeah, because, the sun exposure does change your microbiome, and you are going to be able to digest more carbohydrates when you are getting more sun. So I think that is probably a good tool to use. And I think this is where we can like have a seasonality to our diets too, right? When the summertime, like maybe we are higher carbohydrate, and maybe in the wintertime, we are more in a keto based diet.
Is that kind of how you live, or do you, because you kind of move around, right? You travel a little bit, or do you stay where it's warm and sunny?
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I should probably have a little bit more seasonality to my seasons. I've been chasing the sun for the last few years. So I think, in most places I I wouldn't say I'm high carb, but I do allow myself more carbohydrates. But even like Austin, I was in Austin a few months ago, and I hardly ever saw the sun. So I don't know why people are moving there. I don't really understand that. And maybe it's just the season that I went. But when I was there, I didn't have as many carbohydrates as I do now in Costa Rica, where the sun is like blazing hot.
Mm.
And I'm also like very active here. Like I don't stop moving here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I want to go back to what you said too about as long as you're eating enough protein and enough dietary fat to support hormones. It's scary to think about the protein thing because I was back and forth with mostly vegetarian for the first 2 decades of my life. And then I tried even again between, in my 20s multiple times. And I just feel like I was probably amino acid deficient for the majority of the time I've been here on Earth. And it's scary when you think about that. And I think it was enlightening for me to put more emphasis on that. So I, the last 2 years, really, I've been focusing a lot on beef, especially being, here in Idaho, where there's really high quality meat and, a steak a day. But I do think you could overdo it. Like I look at some of the things on over consuming protein, and I'm not just talking about, hurting the kidneys like they talk about, but there's just a lot of, it's a balance, right? With, especially if you want to live a decently long time, probably don't want to be eating 3 to 4 steaks a day, right?
Yeah, I also think that, I don't know, I know that some people do that. I just don't think that is probably, I think you'd get bored and you would have less enjoyment out of your food that way. So I like a variety of foods for sure. But yeah, protein, when it's funny because I think people are like, well, I went vegan and I lost a bunch of weight. So it's like, how can you say that? Like you can't lose weight without having enough protein. However, you can lose weight because you're in a calorie deficit, which tends to happen sometimes when people go vegan or vegetarian because they're just eating less or eating less of these like high caloric foods. But the problem is that when people do lose weight, and I went through this as well, when people do lose weight from being on a vegan diet, they're losing a lot of weight from muscle, which ends up slowing your metabolism considerably. And then you are stuck with a slower metabolism. And then when you start to eat normally again, or you start to add in these foods, or you want to enjoy yourself, what happens is you put on weight fairly rapidly, which is what happened to me because I was pretty much like eating nothing, a lot of just vegetables. And I did lose a lot of weight. But then when I started to kind of eat normally again, or when I wasn't watching my diet so much, weight just came on so quickly.
Yeah, that's a good point. And also the brain probably suffers, right? When you're in a protein, well, you're in a calorie deficit, you're not getting really any protein on a vegan diet. I know it was like a light bulb turning on when I ate my bison burger. And then when I started eating like ground bison with liver and heart, it was like another level of light bulb in my brain.
I think a lot of things do suffer. Like, and people with animal protein, especially, it's like where you're going to get the most bioavailable nutrition. It's really hard to get enough nutrition. So yeah, of course your brain is going to suffer. Like, of course, weight loss, but your brain's going to suffer. Your hormones are going to suffer. Your detox pathways are going to, like everything is going to suffer because you're not getting enough of this nutrition that our bodies need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that you brought up it's not just about the vanity aspect, that you actually had more confidence and your relationships improved. And yeah, that was my experience as well. Most of my life, I was like very shy. Then when I started like taking care of myself more, it was like a exponential boost in my confidence.
Yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of people just want to stray away from this idea of like improving your body composition or looking better because they think it's, I don't know, they just don't want to be perceived as somebody who cares about what they look like. But I don't care who you are. We all want to look good in our bodies. Like, and I talk to women all the time. And I think when you don't feel good in your body, like I talk to women all the time who are like, I don't even want to bring my kids to the beach because I don't want to get in a bikini. Like, that's so sad. And like, of course we can fake it. We could just say, oh, who cares? Like, whatever, I'm just going to go show up and my body's going to look however it's going to look. But I think you'd have a much more enjoyable experience if you felt good and confident in your body and you just like could put on whatever bikini or bathing suit and go out and enjoy yourself and not even think about it because you're feeling good in your body. Right. And I think like, you know, with the pro-metabolic diet, it's like a lot of people, it's like, it's with the pro-metabolic and also this like body positivity movement. It's like, you just want to feel good and your body's going to look however it's going to look. And that's okay. I don't necessarily agree with that because I really do think you have a better quality of life when you feel good in your body and you feel confident. You're going to make better decisions. You're going to take more risks. You're going to put yourself out there more. You're going, and of course, all the other things that come along with that in terms of like energy and cognitive function and, you know, all of these other things as well, that it's not just about the physical appearance, but I think the physical appearance is also a really important thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And it's a really emotionally charged topic. Where I grew up in Southern California, I remember going over to a friend's house and I would see their, you know, sister, relative, and just kind of morbidly obese. And you know, I'd see people like that throughout my childhood. And then I would look in their kitchen and see like the big jug of canola oil that, you know, the sun shining through the window and I had no clue about nutrition, but I just would look at them and then look at the bottle and then look at them. And over the years, I just started to make these connections like, oh, these are what, you know, overweight people tend to have this in their pantry or on their dining room table. And I mean, why? When you could just make an easy switch, I mean, go to grocery outlet and just make small upgrades. You know, it doesn't have to be Whole Foods or Erewhon, you know, where it's $500 bills, but it's like,
I just think some people are so unaware. And I think, you know, with traveling, I think it's been interesting to have conversations with people who just like have absolutely no idea. And it's pretty enlightening because I feel like, you know, we're in our bubble of people who get it. But I think there's so much more education that's needed because people just really have absolutely no idea.
Yeah. And on especially Instagram, I feel like there's this culture of the more complicated, you know, complex we can make it, where it's not rocket science, right? Like you mentioned a few times, it's like if you're overeating calories, you're going to gain weight, right? And even that people argue about.
Right. Yeah. And there's like truth in everything, right? So it's like, I don't put myself in the, okay, it's all about calories in, calories out, and that's all that matters. Or like, okay, well, if you just eat real food, you don't have to ever count calories and you don't ever have to worry about it either. Mm-hmm. I think the truth is somewhere in the middle there.
Yeah. I mean, the reality is life is complex, right? We're breathing glyphosate, you know, we have heavy metals, brake pad, car exhaust. I mean, you add it all up and it's like we are in a really artificial world compared to what it used to be. We didn't used to need, you know, Instagram influencers
to tell us how to eat and live our lives. Yeah.
But you make a good point. Yeah. Most people off of, you know, social media are just on the street. They are clueless and they just have not heard a lot of this information. So, I wanted to ask you about one aspect to this. Have you worked with women that are thin, like they don't have excess body fat, they're not overweight, but their metabolism's suboptimal? You have to kind of explain that to them, because I think a lot of people assume, you know, you could only get pre-diabetes or diabetes if you have excess body fat. that's not necessarily true, right?
Right. And I mean, a lot of people who, especially, if you have been thin all your life and you never had to worry about it, I think sometimes that can be the worst thing, because people are just like, I can eat whatever I want and keep my body in shape. But yeah, metabolically, they might not be healthy. I see that fairly often. And I do think too that when people with people who are thin, they maybe have never dieted either. So they actually don't have this issue of a slower metabolism. They might have the opposite, where they can kind of eat and be fine. But again, it is not just about weight, right? So it's like with these people, they might be having some gut issues, or they might be having cognitive issues or energy issues. So for these people, it is also really important to kind of like go back to a whole real food diet with enough protein and enough nutrients. Yeah.
Yeah. You were kind of describing me. I feel like that's been me. I'm a really hard gainer. Like even gaining 5 pounds is really, really difficult for me. I mean, muscle. Yeah, I've done that. And I like the resistance bands lately. Is what I've been enjoying. But to me, just, I don't know, lifting weights or anything like that is very boring. So I'm looking to move somewhere, sunnier, at least temporarily, just to start. I used to rock climb, free climb with my friend, just get outdoors more, and hiking. Like walking is my favorite exercise. And I don't know, kind of my viewpoint is if walking is all the movement that someone did, just after breakfast, after lunch, like basically after a meal, just go on a short walk, that's like a great start, right? For most people.
I think so. And I recommend like walking over any other cardio, to be honest, because it isn't going to send that signal to get rid of muscle. So I think it is probably the safest bet. And it's also the most sustainable, because most people can do that anywhere. And yeah, I mean, I think like taking walks after meals is a great idea, especially for blood sugar regulation. I feel like that's a great tool. And it's also just like, even if you take a 15-minute walk after every meal, that really adds up. I am a big proponent of lifting weights, and I used to think it was boring too, until I started I think it depends. It depends what your goal is, but especially for women, I think like lifting weights can be such an empowering tool for them, because instead of like going in and trying to quote unquote quote burn as many calories as you can so that you can lose weight, you actually go in to get stronger. And I've seen this so many times where people like don't want to, or they're like a bit hesitant to get like, especially going to a gym. And then they just end up loving it and falling in love with it. Because I think it can be, it's like I don't know, for me, it's like a game. It's like, how much weight can I lift today? Can I go a little bit stronger today? And I find it such a tool for also like meditation and emotional regulation as well, because you do have to just be, and I hardly even listen to music anymore when I lift weights, because it can be such a time to just like check in with your body and really be in the present moment, especially if you're lifting heavy. I think that can be great. I think especially for women, because I think women have been trained to just like do as much cardio as they possibly can.
Yeah, spin class and what is it, Pilates, or I don't know what.
Yeah, I don't know, all of them. Barry's Boot Camp, Soul Cycle.
What are your thoughts on rebounders? Because when I was raw vegan, that was my thing. I bought like a $10 mini trampoline on Craigslist and started jumping on that. I'd imagine if you overdo it, that could be a muscle loss signal.
Yeah, I guess it could. I don't really see many people doing rebounding for like more than like a few minutes. And I think it could be great for almost like a sprinting kind of a thing, where you're doing it for a short amount of time and then giving yourself rest and then doing it again. And it is like pretty low impact. And I don't know, I mean, do people do that for more than like 10 minutes at a time?
Oh yeah. I mean, my goal was
Really?
like 15 or 20 minutes.
Okay.
But I mean, there's different kind of jumps you could do on it. It's what's interesting
Right.
is it's, I mean, a amazing lymphatic mover.
For sure.
But it's also like, you're using so many stabilizer muscles because you have to try to not fall off of it.
I had one before I left LA in my house. And I would just use it like sporadically, like if I needed a break from work, just like jumping on it for 5 minutes. But it is amazing for lymphatic flow. I don't know that it would, I don't think it would send a muscle, like, I don't think you would be losing muscle using that. I think it would be great.
Mm. Yeah, I find all the alternative workouts interesting. One of my friends, we were talking about the inversion swing, and that's something I think I started using like 7, 8 years ago because it was kind of in the whole vegan kind of movement. It was kind of embedded in there, like the yoga swing, inversion swing, and I had one on springs. So basically, you hang it, and you're like bouncing upside down, which feels amazing on the spine, but there's like two different handle straps. So like one kind of middle wave down your body and then one lower. And you can basically do like push yourself up in the air and do push-ups in the air. And supposedly people have gotten very jacked just by working out on the swing, which is pretty unique. I mean, I guess that's like a superhero workout.
Wow. I have never seen any of these things. The only thing close to that I've used is like the table that inverts. And then I did use like those boots where you can basically hang yourself from a pull-up bar. And that was interesting. I think it is probably really good to get upside down every once in a while.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever use any of the like the Carol bike, which uses like artificial intelligence, or I know some of these conferences I use like the Osteo Strong, where it's supposed to like microfracture your bones.
I did actually use that. I went for a few sessions because they had a location in LA somewhere, and I did go in for a few sessions. Yeah,
it was a weird feeling, right? Did you feel anything from it?
Yeah, I think it's like more. It's almost. I think it probably is really useful, especially for people with injuries, because it does utilize a lot of like isometric, where you're basically just like pushing. Because you're not really doing it for reps, from what I remember. You're basically just like almost holding and pushing. So I think it could be really useful. I don't know that it would really do the job in terms of muscle building. I think it could be useful in like short periods of time.
Yeah, I think John Jaquish out of my show, he's the X3 guy. I think he invented it, and he says it's mostly for bone density increase.
Right. Okay.
Which is interesting. But yeah, I just find all these machines that are coming out kind of fascinating. I think there's like a really expensive robotic one Ben Greenfield's been talking about, but I used to go to Gold's Gym like years ago, and because I was vegetarian, I didn't see any results, which was kind of sad for 2 years straight. But I was using like bench press, free weights, and the machines. And I always kind of like the machines because it seems like you can't really screw it up, and it's almost like training wheels, right? Like anyone could like go and do it.
Yes, especially for somebody who's like not used to being in the gym or is like a little bit nervous and how to use the machines. It's a nice starting point. I prefer people use like dumbbells or barbells because it does have a more natural range of motion, especially for women. We get into these machines and it's like, they're just not meant for our smaller bodies, you know? Like sometimes I get in a machine, I'm like, this is not made for a short person like me. But yeah, they can be really helpful. But I think all these machines that are coming out, I feel like it is a bit of a shortcut, which I guess could be beneficial. But I tend to think there are no shortcuts, and we have to just like go in and do the hard work.
Yeah, because I guess their mentality with the machines and even the X3, 10-minute a day workout is maximum results in the shortest time, which I enjoy that idea personally. But I guess their messaging is if you just give the stimulus, to the muscle to grow, then that's the whole goal. But yeah, there's the enjoyment factor and, how long it takes for you to get the the cognitive mood boost, which I always feel almost immediately.
Yeah. And I do think like it is about the stimulus. And if you can only work out 10 to 15 minutes a day if you're doing it every day.
Mm-hmm.
But I think then there comes a time where you are going to need to progressively overload. So you're going to have to increase that in some way. And I don't know how the X3, I've never used one, but you do have to send more of a signal because your body does adapt fairly easily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it was interesting because I was doing the Hex bar when I was doing my Almond Raw 23 hours a day fasting experiment. And
Oh my God.
I was really consistent with like the dumbbells and the free weights, and I did get jacked. And then I stopped, I don't know, for maybe 6 months, and, kind of lost my gains. And then I started on the X3 bar for like 6 months and then gained it all back really quickly. So yeah, definitely the bands definitely work. It's just, I guess it just feels different, from
from a traditional workout.
Right.
So is it with the X3 bar, is it like, can you change the resistance? Like, can you increase or no, it's just one resistance?
Well, wait, what he says is it's variable resistance. So basically you're protecting the joints, which their argument, the pro resistance band people, is that with traditional weights, you can overload the joints and cause injury a lot easier, versus with bands, it's almost impossible to do that. And they talk about like range of motion. So say, you wrap a band around your upper body and you're doing like a bench press movement. When you're all the way out, you're at your, was it strongest? Yeah, basically when you're fully extended. Yeah. Yeah. So and then you basically go to failure. So, it's like 15 reps minimum and then 40 maximum. And then you move up to the different band. So like basically they're not afraid of high reps with that style.
Got it.
But it's really hard. Like the overhead press, I don't know if that's the weakest muscles. That must be on my arm, because even on the lowest band, that is so hard for me to do. Like the overhead press.
Well, probably because it's more resistance, right? Because where's the band coming from? The floor?
Yeah.
So it's just more resistance. So it's probably harder to get that lighter resistance. But yeah, okay.
But yeah, with the metabolism, you always hear, like you mentioned, like the pro metabolic, / repeat. And it's kind of, you have different people kind of saying different things. And now, I mean, it's all kind of become one voice at this point with the big influencers. But the messaging is you want to do everything you possibly can to not lower your pulse below, I think it's 75 to 90 beats per minute, or to lower your body temperature below, whatever arbitrary number they made up, 98.6. And, it's evil. It's a horrible thing that humans are getting colder. Their average body temperature is going down. And that's a sign, apparently, that our metabolism is going down the tubes, as a human race. And I kind of disagree with that. A lot of the research that I've seen shows that actually a slower metabolism, and certain, and you could make a study to show anything, of course, there's so many variables to control for, but slow metabolism is not necessarily always bad, right?
No, it's not. And it's interesting because I did read some of Ray Peat's work, and I do think he mentions this, and he mentions it actually is better for longevity to have a slower metabolism. So I think there's a lot of taking somebody's work and then making it to be something else. But yeah, I think there's pros and cons to it, right? So a slower metabolism might be better for longevity, but we also live in a modern world where food is everywhere. And so it might also be beneficial to have a faster metabolism sometimes. And I think it's probably also good to kind of go through phases of maybe phases where you do have a slower metabolism, where you're maybe like more in a deficit and slowing your metabolism down for a specific period of time, because that is what happens when you lose fat. Like when you go through a weight loss phase, your metabolism does slow down. Is that bad? Well, I guess it could be if you're like in that for too long, and depending on your environment, and if you're then going to overconsume food and put on weight again, then yeah, it can be really bad. But at the same time, speeding your metabolism up, a really good idea. It's so hard to say, because yes, you do want to, like, especially if you have a slow metabolism and you are overweight, then you do really want to do whatever you can do to speed up your metabolism so that you can go into a fat loss phase where it is easier for you to lose weight and maintain your weight. So I think there's benefits to both. And I think it really depends on the specific person and the specific situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great point. Yeah. You always hear, if you have cold hands and feet, you need to increase your carbs. I was actually the opposite. I was kind of developing cold hands and feet from being high carb. I cut my carbs and then I warmed up. Which is like so opposite to what you hear. I'm like, what did that? I don't get it. And especially getting on cod liver oil, which was supposed to lower my metabolism, according to many people. And it just seemed to raise it and made me very warm. So it's very fascinating.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, maybe because it can help like lower inflammation. So maybe there's an aspect there. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, vitamin A is very, very powerful. I just posted Luke's story. My friend interviewed Dave Asprey, and Dave was, he just came out with a fat soluble vitamin supplement, and he was bragging that he takes 20,000 IU of vitamin A a day. I was like, how's that going to turn out? That's a lot to do, like long term. Like maybe 6 months to a year, and then take a break. I don't know if I would do that for life.
Yeah, I mean, with I have I think with supplements I think they can be really useful, but I think everybody goes to supplements instead of like looking at the bigger picture and the bigger rocks. And I think they can be useful, but for most people, and I think it's so easy to just be like, okay, I'm going to just try the supplement or use a supplement. And I take my share of supplements, but I think we have to like start with a foundation of like food, sunlight, environment, sleep, exercise, and then we can put supplements on top of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think some people will try supplements, whether it's my brand or anything else, and then say, oh, it didn't work for me. But they didn't have all that stuff that you just mentioned down. And so they blame the supplement. But the supplements will work better when you have all that other stuff.
Totally. And I think also people are so out of touch with knowing what's happening in their bodies. And most people just like go about their day and not even really thinking about anything. So they're taking the supplement and expecting like magic something to happen that never happens. But really they're not also checking in and noticing the small things that might be occurring.
Mm-hmm. I will say though, Shilajit plus coffee, there's something there where it definitely changes the way that coffee metabolizes. I feel a huge difference if I don't take like a gram of Shilajit with my cup of coffee. It's fascinating. There's some mineral synergy there. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's one supplement I've been like trying to get my hands on in the last few years. But it's just so hard to get supplements where I am.
I'll have to send you some. I'll send a pigeon over there.
Yeah, that's the only way it'll get through, because everything gets stuck in customs. They don't allow anything in here.
Wow,
hardly.
I can kind of feel for you, because here in Idaho, the postal service in rural, Idaho really sucks. Where half the books I order from Amazon don't make it here.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Send it back. It's like attempted delivery. I'm like, I don't know, just because there's snow next to my mailbox or something.
Not even going to try.
Right. But I probably have too many books. Maybe that's a sign that I should read some of them before ordering more. But I wanted to ask you about glucose monitoring. That's been a really fun rabbit hole that I've been going down lately, measuring blood glucose. And it's interesting since like the glucose goddess blew up, and I guess Mark Hyman like shouted her out, and then that like exploded her stuff. But she's been like talking about order of eating. So basically, carb dressing, eating fiber first. And then, she shows all these graphs of blood glucose spikes and how the spike is lower if you have a salad, before having your, carbs and protein. And I've been experimenting with that, and there's definitely truth to it. If I go out to eat and I don't have a salad first, and it doesn't have to be like super heady. It's like, like last night I had oysters and then the salad, and I was still okay, but like, it's interesting because I've been combining like basically the continuous glucose monitor with the finger prick and kind of correlating, seeing how accurate it is. And I know the CGM is like a 20 to 45 minute delay or whatever, because it's not measuring your blood glucose. It's the interstitial. The needle's not sticking into your blood for 2 weeks, which would probably hurt. It's more superficial, but it's been just so enlightening to use that with, the Freestyle Libre with the Levels app, and experimenting with like berberine, dihydroberberine, Quicksilver Scientific Bitters, Digestitol, like combining all these different things, citrus extracts, all these things that are supposed to help blood glucose, and seeing what actually does it for me. And then seeing in real time how that affected my blood glucose. And I mean, I noticed with my mood and with my energy level, if I have way too much carbs and that I didn't balance it out with fiber, I'm like literally falling asleep at the wheel. So it's been really fun to kind of see. And I think a lot of people kind of, talk down on the Oura Ring and tracking, and, you're getting too, too heady with it, but it showed me that I had pre-diabetes, and I wasn't, all these people were telling me that it's inaccurate, or I was reading that's not accurate. So, okay, I went to the drugstore, I got the finger prick, I pricked my finger, fasting blood glucose first thing in the morning was over 100. Googled it. What is pre-diabetes? Okay, shoot, I better, just cut carbs at least for breakfast. And just doing breakfast, cutting carbs, made a huge difference in my daily blood glucose. I've been doing 0 carb for breakfast for, I don't know, a couple months, and it's absolute game changer for me personally. Just my cognition. And it's so opposite to what all the pro-metabolic people say. They're like, you have to eat carbs for breakfast. Don't restrict macronutrients. You're going to become unbalanced. For me, it balanced me out to do that. So
I think using a CGM is probably like the number one tool that I think everybody should use for a short amount of time, at least. And I go through periods where I will use one for a few months. And then, because obviously things change, right? Your stress levels change, your sleep changes. But I think it can be really helpful in helping you be more intuitive, because you will start to notice the way that you feel. And then you can like check your blood sugar monitor. Okay, my blood sugar is really high, or my blood sugar is really low. And then you kind of know how you feel when that happens. So then you don't always have to use a CGM, because you'll be like, oh, I bet that my blood sugar, like I know for me, even though I still experiment sometimes, like I know for me when my blood sugar is too high or when it's like falling rapidly. Also, like not even just falling asleep, but what I've noticed is like mood issues. Like I will have really, really bad anxiety when my blood sugar is dropping, like severe anxiety. Like, so I think that's one thing too, that people who have any like depression, anxiety, also like focus issues, like these are all things that can be fixed in managing your blood sugar regulation. So I think it's a great tool to use. And yeah, I don't think that we need carbs at every meal, every 2 hours, or your blood sugar is going to go down. Actually, like, even when I'm fasted and I wear a blood sugar monitor, if I've been like, so I usually will fast on my travel days. So I will sometimes be fasted for 48 hours and my blood sugar is nice and even and exactly where it needs to be. So that's like another thing. It's like, oh, you can't fast, your blood sugar is going to fall, or you have to have a snack before you go to bed, or you're going to wake yourself up because your blood sugar is dropping in the middle of the night. That's not necessarily true. But wearing a continuous blood glucose monitor can be helpful in figuring that out for yourself, because everybody is different. And yeah, I think like fiber before carbs can be helpful. So fiber or protein, I think, what I have found. And I have found like apple cider vinegars. I know she talks about this pretty often, the glucose goddess. Apple cider vinegar before meals can be helpful. But I think having your protein before your carbohydrates is one of the tools that I always suggest. And we can play around with carb cycling. So you can do this. So we are actually more carb tolerant. Like we have more of a tolerance for carbs in the morning, but I just find that for most people, they do better with the carbs in the evening because it keeps their blood sugar stable throughout the day. When people start their day with carbs, I do find that they have more cravings, more hunger throughout the day. So I think it's a great tool to use to just have your carbohydrates in the evening. So just with your dinner or even like a little bit with your lunch. Also to play around with, if you're working out, to time your carbs post-workout, in your meal post-workout. And some people find this is helpful also in their pre-workout meal. So having a little carbs in your pre-workout meal and also in your post-workout meal, or one or the other. But one thing I have also found that can be really helpful for a lot of people is you can have higher carb days and then lower carb days. So we can go even a few days with very low carb or even no carbs, and then have carbs on maybe the days that you're working out. So on the days that you're not working out, maybe we don't really need the carbs and we keep those carbs lower. I think also, especially for females, timing your, almost like cycling your carbs with your menstrual cycle, I think works really well. So having maybe more carbohydrates before you start menstruating in your luteal phase can be helpful, because people tend to have more carb cravings during that time, and also tend to be hungrier during that time too. So I think that can work for some people as well.
Yeah, I love all the memes. It's like when your girlfriend cuts carbs, and I think there's like a Tyrannosaurus Rex one I saw like last year. And
I haven't seen any of this.
There's a lot of them. They're really funny, but yeah, that's a great point about women in their cycle, because I do think that's and I've seen that in the research that it really does help for women to cycle in carbs, and generally men do better on a like longer term keto diet if they can sustain that, and intermittent fasting. Would you also include that in there, or?
Yeah. And again, like if you, as a woman, if you're going to be intermittent fasting, like it's probably better to do even like longer fasts, better to do once you start menstruating. So in your follicular phase, it's a good time to do any type of fasting. I don't, intermittent fasting is an interesting one because I don't really recommend it. Although it's not that I say it's bad for you. I think you just have to be really careful with it, especially if you're trying to build up your metabolism and or lose fat. You do want to be sending this protein signal multiple times a day. And when you're intermittent fasting, that does become challenging. And most people, but also most women, tend to undereat protein. So for intermittent fasting, we're only giving ourselves, let's say 2 meals to get in enough protein. It's going to be fairly challenging.
Have you seen like the map? Going back to supplements, because I'm a junkie, but the master amino pattern, there tend to be tablets, but they have powdered products. They're essentially EAAs, essential amino acids, but in a very specific ratio. Those
Yes.
and supposedly, 1% wasted, 99% net nitrogen utilization. Essentially 99% of it is getting to the muscle. I know there's an MLM using that in their 10-day weight loss program, but I wonder if that's a way to kind of hack it if someone wants to intermittent fast and do that.
For sure. I highly recommend that. Actually, like I went to the gym this morning and I just like didn't really have an appetite and didn't really feel like eating anything. And it was like kind of on the earlier side. So one thing that I utilize is essential amino acids. So I will have those sometimes pre-workout and then also intra-workout. And that can really help with any, just help with like muscle sparing basically, because your muscles are going to be fed by the amino acids. And I just tend to find that it helps with recovery and also energy throughout the workout.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've been kind of cycling 3 different drinks and careful not to revert to my liquidarian days because I used to do mostly blue green algae with chia seeds and hibiscus with chia seeds. I am getting back on chia though. I just bought some at Costco yesterday. I'm excited. Are you a fan of those? Or?
It's with chia?
Yeah.
Not so much. No. Not that I'm not a fan, but
yeah.
I don't know. What is the value?
It has some iron. It has a fiber. Yeah, it's kind of like bulk. Like I do really well on psyllium fiber. There's some interesting research, like taking psyllium before bed for improving sleep. Kind of been delving into the fiber stuff lately, and it's really fascinating. Obviously the carnivore people are against it, but also the repeat people. The only safe fiber is the raw carrot. And like bamboo shoots and cooked mushrooms.
Well, there's is it partially hydrogenated, partially what is it called?
I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
Gorgon. Yeah, it's like called sun fiber in some places. That can be actually really helpful for some people with gut issues, and people it can be helpful for sometimes with people with constipation, and then also sometimes for people with loose stools as well. So that can be beneficial. I've experimented here and there. I didn't really notice too much of a difference, but for some, I've seen some people really have a great result with it.
Yeah, it's interesting how some people, they cut out all fiber and they get these tremendous benefits. And then for me, I got thrashed. It was like loose stools, more bloated and gassy. And then I add back in fiber and it's like better everything. Just energy, sleep, mood, digestion, everything. So gut health was one of the journeys that you went through, right?
Yeah. I struggled with a lot of things, but I do think that a lot of my issues came from being on this vegan diet that I was on for a few years, but I was really struggling with what I think was SIBO. I mean, I tested positive for it. But I think there was a lot of other things going on. But yeah, I was having severe bloating and all kinds of digestive issues. I felt like I couldn't eat anything. So it's like a miracle that I can basically eat pretty much everything now. And I think there is some people who, especially with gut issues, don't really do well with fiber. So I think, again, it comes back down to the individual. And some people do well with more, fiber from root vegetables, or sweet potatoes, fruit, versus leafy greens. So it really depends. But I think, I'm also really pretty clear that a lot of so many people's gut issues come from emotional trauma too, and not dealing with their emotions. And what else was I going to say? Oh yeah, about I think it's also back to the liver too. A lot of times, especially people with SIBO, have liver issues, and this is why people because there, you know, you go see all these functional doctors, and I know like this is what I went through, and I know so many other people went through it. You treat yourself for this specific thing, and then you're better, and then it comes back, or just like never really goes away. And I think we have to like get to the root of the issue. And a lot of times it's like the function of the digestive system. So for me, it was like really supporting my stomach acid and my liver in order to really deal with the SIBO. So it wasn't really the SIBO, it was really like the function of my digestive system.
Mm. Did you do emotional work as well to help that condition that you think contributed to reversing SIBO?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, that's been like a constant battle, but I do think that was one of the biggest issues, you know? Mm-hmm. I really changed a lot about my environment, people in my life. And I think that really, and I think just like a mindset too. I think if you continue to think that you have this sickness, that this sickness is a part of you, then you're going to continue to keep that sickness in your life. Mm-hmm. So I think there's multiple aspects of it, and everybody again is going to be different. Everyone has like different things they need to work through, but I do think changing your mindset around what is quote unquote wrong with you is the number one thing.
Mm. And being on your phone, on social media, constantly scrolling through posts and stories probably doesn't help that, right? I know for me, like when I started taking more time off of the screen, just my overall health got better. You know, stress levels went down, just everything.
Yeah, well, I mean, not even just like the blue light, which is a major issue, but also, yeah, just like the comparing yourself to other people, like seeing everybody else live their lives and feeling like, oh, I'm not good enough, or I'm not doing that, or my life isn't like that. Yeah. And then you're just like, you're also stuck in the screen and not living your life. So then that's like a whole nother thing. I mean, and it's tough because social media has a lot of really beautiful things that it can bring into your life. And, you know, you can meet a community of like-minded people. But I do think we really have to check our relationship to it. Mm-hmm. And like, I run my business on Instagram mostly. So I do spend time on my phone, and probably too much, but I mean, I don't really spend very much time at this point in my life on social media, and I continue to like spend less and less time on there.
Yeah. I think maybe not having unrestricted access. Like I know there's an app now, like Opal, I think, where it can like lock you out of Instagram or different apps. And then the extreme I've seen, it's like a physical lockbox. You can lock your phone in with like a timer. It doesn't let you get in, you know, outside of a certain time.
And that can all be helpful, but I think having some boundaries with yourself and having some discipline. Like if I go on social media, I do set timers sometimes. I mean, of course, sometimes I get sucked in and then I'm like, what am I doing? But I do think it's really helpful to have a specific amount of time, like, especially if you're, you know, a lot of people do their work on social media, like going on social media and doing what you need to do. Go post what you need to do, go post your stories, and then get off. Or if you do want to scroll, fine, go scroll, but maybe set a timer for 10 minutes. And once that timer is done, that's it. It's like,
yeah, one good trick.
It's just a waste of time.
My friend Justin, he just takes pictures for stories all day. He has a family, and then at the end of the day, he'll post them all like in the same few minutes, which I thought was genius. So that way you don't have to show people in real time what you're doing in your life. It's just at the end of the day, here's my lunch, you know, whatever.
That is exactly what I do. Like I will take photos throughout the day, especially if you're like out with friends, you know, like I went, I spent the day around town the other day, and I was like with somebody, and they were like, you take a lot of, you like really do a good job taking photos, but I'm hardly on my phone, you know, I'm like just taking the photo. And then later on, when I have a moment when I'm by myself, or, you know, I have like a moment where I can sit down and do that, then I'll do that. And then I'll be off of it. So you're not, because every time you do open the app, even if you're just posting to go post something, it's going to be so easy to like see what else is going on, watch somebody else's stories, scroll through other people's posts.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to circle back to the CGM. I think on your website, do you have the Very one? Is that the one that you use, that company? Or?
I do. I use Very. Yeah. Well, I have been using them over like the last, like, I don't know, 6 months or so.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of a lot of work. I know a lot of people will track their meals through like Chronometer or one of those things. But on either Levels or Very, because I've tried both, you can input your breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks, and even like exercises, which will affect your blood glucose. And it is really cool to like, especially, and then you stack that with like an Oura ring, and like the other night I had a hypoglycemia bout, like, I don't know, 2 to 4 a.m. or something, where it dipped below 80. But I didn't wake up once during that time. And normally hypoglycemia in the middle of the night would wake someone up. So, which is a good sign, I think.
Do you think that's hypoglycemia, or do you think your blood sugar is just like on the lower end?
I think the average is 90 lately. My average blood sugar has been like 90 to 93 milligrams per deciliter. But yeah, it's generally only when I'm asleep that it'll dip, because you could set it on these apps or on Freestyle Libre or whatever, like your range. And I think what do they recommend, between 80 and I think 110 or something like that is usual. But yeah, it's interesting to see. I mean, there's just so much self-experimentation there. Like, even like last night after dinner, I didn't have one big spike and a drop. I had a spike, it went down quickly, and then another spike and it went down, which I've heard that's a good sign, to have like a double one. So it's, I don't know. I mean, you could read a million studies and have different beliefs about what what means what, but I think what I've been trying to get across is like, spikes aren't bad. That's not my messaging, with the glucose monitor. It's not like you're trying to flatline, right? Like when you described you're fasting for 48 hours, that's not the ideal state, right? But it's just good to know that when you're not consuming calories or food, that you are stable, right? Because a person with an unhealthy metabolism, they wouldn't see that, right? The stability there.
Right. It's like your body's doing what it's supposed to be doing, which is keeping your blood sugar stable, even if you don't have food coming in. And even when you do have food coming in, your body's job is to keep your blood sugar. It wants to keep your blood sugar stable. So yeah, if there's too many spikes, or if the spikes are going really high or not coming down quick enough, then I think that is an issue. But yeah, sometimes your blood sugar is going to spike from something you ate. I do find, like, if you have carbs on just carbs, sometimes like your blood sugar will spike, but then it'll come down fairly quickly, depending on what it is. Like if I have I'll often just have like half a papaya by itself, with salt, but my blood sugar will come down fairly quickly. But if I pair that carbohydrate with fat, which they say helps, I find that my blood sugar kind of stays up for longer. So it's interesting. I personally find that having protein with a carb keeps it more stable, and that it comes down where it's supposed to, when it's supposed to.
Have you tried like having like bacon with your no, that sounds kind of gross. Have you tried having like protein with the papaya? Have you done that experiment? Like
protein powder, or like just protein,
or whatever, to see if the spike was
the different. Papaya, or I'm sure I have. I don't remember.
Too many experiments.
Like a steak and papaya, or like chicken and papaya or something. Yeah.
Yeah. I've only had fresh papaya, I think, once. What was the one fruit? I think passion fruit is still my favorite tropical fruit that I've ever had. It's so good.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Have you had that one? Or?
I don't know. I think I might have, but I don't know that would be my favorite. I'm more of like a papaya mango. Papaya and mangoes are my favorite, and they're very delicious here.
Yeah, mangoes are. I might try to grow some tropical fruit if I get somewhere sunnier. I
was going to say, in your location, I'm not so sure that would do well.
Well, in a growing dome, you could grow subtropical where it snows, but if you put a growing dome in like SoCal or Texas, you can grow full on Hawaii pineapples and guava, whatever. I don't know. Well, guava grows actually just, my parents have a guava tree. That's one of my least favorite fruits. It just tastes weird.
Yeah, it has an interesting taste. Not my favorite either.
It's like a pear with an apple, I think.
Right.
So let's see, where else did I want to go with this? Yeah, it's interesting the point you made about we have more of a tolerance for carbs in the morning, but you find that most people do better with them in the evening. What are your thoughts on for women or men, just with the carb cycling thing? How do you determine, with the client that you're working with, like whether they cycle carbs every day or, one day or 1 or 2 days a week? Because I've been averaging like 1 or 2 days a week, generally at night. I'll have carbs, and the rest of the week it's like below 30 grams. And that's been working pretty well, but I'm starting to wonder if I should just, for a length of time, just not carb cycle. Maybe because I'm a man, but some of the research I've been reading that Dominic D'Agostino posts is really fascinating. One study was decreased exercise tolerance with carb cycling versus staying strict keto for like 10 to 14 days consecutively. I don't know the nuances of that study, if it was all men or women in the study, but that kind of stood out to me. And I was like, because I know there are benefits to carb cycling, but the fun part is like when to do it based on what. I know some people talk about leptin. I think I plan to talk about that in a future show with someone, like, whether leptin's high or low, that can be an indicator of whether to introduce carbs,
Yeah. Interesting. I wonder if it's because you're like coming in and out of ketosis that it kind of messes with you. I think I leave it up to the client, is like in terms of preference. And I think it's hard because if you're feeling really good on a low carbohydrate diet, you don't really want to add them back in. So I think like you can ride that wave until you feel like, okay, I have a craving for carbs, or I'm feeling a little, maybe like your energy is low. I have somebody in my program right now who was like feeling really good, losing a ton of weight, like everything was going well, but she was like, her energy was really struggling. And we came to find out that she was like, carbs were fairly low. And she was like, okay, I'm going to experiment now with adding some carbs in for dinner. And then she said like immediately her energy levels just like shifted and she feels like amazing now. So it's really about experimentation. So trying low carb and seeing maybe if you can do that for a few days. And again, it's going to also be determined on where you are in your cycle if you're a female. So that is going to have an effect on that as well. But I think it's about experimentation, like just seeing how and when you feel best adding those carbohydrates in. And I tend to think it's just best to do it. Like for me personally, I don't say like, okay, I'm going to cycle my carbs in every 3 or 4 days. I do stay on the lower carb end, but then if I go out to eat with somebody, then I'm like, okay, this looks really good, I'm going to eat that. Or if like I'm at the grocery store and the fruit looks really amazing, or something like that, then I'm like, okay, I'm going to have that. And I do try to have it around my workouts and on my workout days. So I try to do it in a smart way, educated way, but there is also a lot of intuition that comes in with that as well.
Yeah.
And like just enjoyment of life.
Tacos are my weakness.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great point. Do you tend to try to put them off later in the day, like early evening?
I do. Yeah. I definitely try to. I don't tend to have carbs in my morning meal for the most part. Every once in a while, like let's say on a weekend or something. I like to make these protein pancakes that are in one of my recipe books. And they are kind of higher in carbs. So like sometimes I will have those in the morning, but for the most part, like on a regular day, I usually tend to have lower carbs until my last meal of the day. And my last meal of the day is also like before the sun sets. So usually here it's like at 5.
Wow.
So fairly early. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. I've been eating dinner earlier and it's feels amazing. It's difficult if you have friends or family where they're at, average dinner times like 8 to 9 p.m. or whatever, which I've experienced. It's like you have to dance around that.
And that's okay. I think sometimes, like you can make adjustments. You don't have to be perfect or strict all the time. But I do think it is really valuable to have an earlier eating window and to stop eating at least like 3 to 4 hours before bed.
Mm-hmm. Do you have your clients watch the sunset? That's one of the things I really miss about being not at high. Being at high elevation. It's really hard. You got to drive somewhere. You're just watching the sunset over a mountain. But when I used to live by the beach, just going and getting barefoot in the wet sand and just looking out, it was doing something to my whole body. I mean, definitely my brain, but the electricity would I don't know if I was overthinking it, but it was improving my overall health to do that every day, just going and, quote, sun gazing, but like the last 10 or 15 minutes.
I think if you can, I think it's really helpful. Like I do that here almost every night. The beach is like a 5-minute walk from my place, which is beautiful. But I do think you should at least like be outside when the sun is setting. I think this can have really beneficial effects on your sleep and melatonin production as well. Mm-hmm. So, and I think it is really important to also then block the blue light after you watch the sunset, because you can't watch the sunset and come in, turn all the lights on, eat your dinner. That's probably not the best for sleep. But if you can, I absolutely think people should be doing it. I think the sunrise is probably more important than the sunset, but if you can do both, I think people should do it. Yeah.
Yeah. With my night owl friends, I think that's out of the picture.
Yeah.
Maybe a couple times a year you'd catch the sunrise. But yeah, I had Matt Maruka on, the light diet, raw optics, and he's really big into, sunrise, sunset, but I think he's kind of calmed down about the all day sun, and I've seen him wearing like sunscreen on his nose now, and
Oh, wow. Interesting.
I'm sure it's healthier sunscreen, but, not, zinc based, not like petroleum or whatever. But
well, yeah, it also depends where you are, right? Because I think I saw he was like in Bali or something. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, you do want to get as much sun exposure during the day, but without burning for sure. And again, it depends where you are. Like here, you have to be really careful about being in the sun. I went out the other day surfing, probably like mid-morning, and just was like wearing a new bikini that my butt was like pretty exposed, and it hasn't really seen too much sun because I usually wear like a bikini that covers more. And I was, even just like an hour and a half out there, I was burnt. And I was like, that is lobster, like peeling, like really like haven't been that burnt in a long time. So that I don't recommend. Definitely not good to burn for sure. But you do want to get sun exposure without burning. And then building that up over time is going to allow you to get more sun exposure.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely feel just a difference because I haven't seen much UV light here for the last, 6 months. And mostly with my brain, I feel it more than anything. Just kind of a little slower, almost like hibernation mode. And it kind of makes sense, right? Because you're not getting that signal through your eye, and the mitochondria in your eye then send that signal throughout your brain, and then that sends it out to your body, and it's a whole thing. So,
which is why the wintertime is like probably for more resting, right? And healing versus the summertime being more active.
Yeah, it was fun. I did like a little hike through the deep snow the other day around the lake, and it's such a workout, tramping through snow because you have to lift your legs so high. So it's like you have to walk half as long and get the same amount of exercise.
Yeah, that's like through the mud here.
Do you want to go through some of these questions that listeners sent in?
Sure.
This was actually a good question I had for you. And this is a heated topic, especially of late, because the study that came out. So the artificial sweeteners, which, all the white sugar and honey and maple syrup people, which I used to be in that camp, but now I'm just like, there's not a big difference between sucrose and honey and maple syrup. I think I don't know. For me, just cutting out all refined sugar, but also honey and maple syrup for a time, probably not for life. And I've switched to a matcha leaf from Shen Blossom, which, is stevia alternative, or Omica stevia, which I think you're a fan of. Been off and on of that stuff for years. That's like the highest quality liquid stevia, right? It's like everything else sucks.
It's the best one. I don't even want to tell you how much I paid to have it shipped over to me, but I was going through withdrawals because I am obsessed. I love it so much. And I ran out and I got it shipped here. So that's how much I love it. Yeah.
Do you mostly use that with coffee, or how do you use it?
Yeah, really, that's the only time I really use it. If I like make baked goods or anything like sweet, I will use maybe honey or maple syrup, or maybe coconut sugar. But I do use stevia for coffee, especially in the morning. I don't really want to be starting my day with maple syrup. So I will usually have some raw milk and a little bit of stevia in it. And yeah, the study you're referring, is that about the erythritol?
Yeah. And I know a bunch of people made rebuttals to it. I think Mike Mutzel.
Yeah, I saw. Yeah.
It's kind of sensationalist, I feel like, and it's just more ammo for people to say, see, I told you keto is harming your health. It's like, well, one, not everyone on the keto diet is consuming those, right? But two, these are proven to be safe as long as you're not consuming 50 pounds of stevia a day. Or I know the fertility study that said stevia is like a contraceptive. They were feeding the animals so much stevia, way beyond what we would consume. I mean, what, a dropper a day? It's like,
yeah, I didn't read the study, so I don't really know what it says and what they came up with, but I do find, especially with erythritol, this is just this sugar alcohol I don't recommend most people have. I do find, especially people with gut issues, tend to have severe issues. People tend to have bloating or gas with erythritol. So it's not something that I recommend. And it's often sourced. It depends how it's sourced too. Because a lot of times it's sourced from GMO corn, from what I understand.
Yeah. The study was, it's on CNN Health. That's how you know it's real.
Okay, right, exactly.
Zero calorie sweetener linked to heart attacks and strokes. But it's interesting because our body will actually make erythritol when we consume sugar. So,
interesting.
But yeah, it's just one of those things. I've been liking Sucralose. I'm not an affiliate, but for Level Up, that company, they sell the C8 MCT oil.
Okay, yeah.
But it's allulose, monk fruit, and stevia. That's a really nice blend. So I tend to use that in my coffee, and I'll switch it up. Some days I'll do just the Omica, but
yeah, I have no issues with artificial sweeteners. I prefer stevia or monk fruit for low or no calorie sweeteners. But I do prefer a pure monk fruit, because I know a lot of the monk fruit is kind of mixed with other things. And again, with these sugar alcohols, I tend to just see people having issues, gas and bloating.
The Lakanto maple syrup, I'll say, was pretty gross, though. I tried that. So
really, I remember trying it and I thought it was delicious, but I was like, this is not going well for me here.
I haven't had a company yet, or I haven't found a product that did maple syrup justice. But I just feel small amounts. It's not about being cutting these out forever. It's just when you start Googling, my breakfast for a couple of years was a glass of orange juice or a glass of raw milk from my goats that I used to have, with eggs, and then what I do, bacon. But, I think one glass of orange juice has 26 grams of sugar. And I was adding up, I was having that with milk. I was getting hit with 50 to 70 grams of carbs or something, right at breakfast. It's no wonder I feel kind of foggy for the last couple of years. So I was front loading my carbs all at once.
Right. And this is why people are like, oh, I'm having a high protein breakfast, but then you're also having high carbs too. So it's not really the same thing. And I do think this is also the reason I suggest people have carbs later in the day, because you do tend to have less protein when you have the carbs. So front loading your protein, making sure you're getting that protein in, I think is really beneficial. And then you can like play around and have a little bit more room at dinner once you've hit your protein goals for the day.
Makes sense. Yeah. My body responds really well to like a handful of sauerkraut with eggs.
Yeah.
And lately I've been really into the Magic Spoon cereal. I mean, that's like a processed food, but it's just like crack. Have you had that one? Or
I haven't, but the ingredients actually are pretty okay. I haven't tried it because, again, like it's hard for me to get anything here. But I actually told my sister, because she has 3 kids and they're boys, and one of them just like loves his carbs and just won't eat anything other than carbs. And cereal is such an easy thing, especially for kids for breakfast. But I told my sister to buy that for the kids, and she said they were really, and she was really liking it too. So
yeah, the fruit one and the frosted, I haven't tried any of the others, but the fruit one tastes exactly like Fruit Loops. Like exactly, I don't know how they did it. It's crazy. But that's kind of like an appetizer, and been playing around with almond milk, like Regenerative Farms. I forget the brand. It's in like the red carton, but that was like blasphemy. I think it was so funny how offended people got, because I gifted my goats to my friends, and they're still getting their pets, and they're with the herd. They're a lot happier. And I just took a break from all milk, and the only dairy I'm consuming right now is like cottage cheese and heavy cream, and feel really good. And it's just where I'm at, probably won't do it forever. We'll probably, reintroduce raw milk at some point, but for now that's working for me. So
why almond milk over like a coconut milk? Is there a reason or
I think just the flavor.
Oh, really? Okay.
And I don't do it straight. It's just as a base for that cereal. Just for nostalgia, because I was Lucky Charms, Honey Nut Cheerios, and Fruit Loops kid,
Yeah, me too. Lucky Charms. And then I just would always eat the marshmallows that's what a sugar addict I was when I was a kid.
It was
just
the best
eating
part.
The marshmallows. Yeah.
Someone asked, this is actually a question I had for you. So they said, what are the best electrolytes on the go? I know, what is it? Rob Wolf created like LMNT, and that's become super popular in the carnivore community. And then now there's like better ones coming out with like creatine and, real salt instead of just table salt. And, that's been like one of the drinks I've been having. Like I have like a fiber drink, an amino acid drink, essential amino acid, and then an electrolyte drink. And I'll kind of just have those throughout the day. And versus the adrenal cocktail, which was a sugar bomb, which was like 50 grams of carbs. I mean, I was probably going close to 500 grams a day doing 3 adrenal cocktails a day. And that's orange juice, coconut water, and salt. It's like,
which I think is like probably like one of the worst things for your adrenals, but that's me. For electrolytes, I love the LMNT. I travel with those. I carry those around. It's nice because they come in packets. You could like take those on the go. And I think for me, it's like really about the flavor. Like I think it's very addicting. It's just really easy to drink water when it has that in it.
What's your favorite? I think, do they have a watermelon? I think
that is my favorite flavor, watermelon. They have a raspberry, which is pretty good too. And I actually really love their like, if you drink the mango, they have like a mango chili one. So if you have like alcohol, like in a tequila, it's kind of really nice with that. If you drink, I also love to have it on some fruit, like a mango chili on like some mango or papaya is really good. But also like just like good salts. Sometimes I just carry like a little container of just salt in my bag. And I think that can be really helpful too, especially just like putting that in water, especially if you're like at the airport or traveling and you're unable to kind of get good water as well.
Yeah, that's a good tip. I do the expensive version. It's like the Kintone,
I have those too.
Sachets. Nice. I don't know.
But
if
they
it's
come
that
in
much better.
glass. I just like always think they're gonna explode or break in my bag.
Well, they have little packet ones. It's
Okay.
a little awkward to take because you have to like squeeze it. It's almost like what was that little Go-Gurt kind of thing?
Right.
Like that.
Okay. Yeah. I like those. I think that can, I've been using those, the Quinton ones, when I go to the gym. So I'll put that in my water when I go to the gym, which is like a nice little workout boost from the salt.
Yeah.
Sodium.
Yeah, I think having that minus the sugar is very smart because for a while I'm like, why are they using stevia? And they should just use, sucrose, or white sugar. But now I'm like, oh, okay, I see why there's because that can lead to diabetes.
Yeah.
It's more complicated, but generally, on the same topic, someone asked, how does daily or less frequent alcohol drinking affect gut health? And that's been something I've been playing with, like trying dry farm wines again. And then I noticed I had like some insomnia come up just from one glass, which was weird because I never, ever have insomnia. So I just stopped the experiment. I'm like, all right, maybe my system's resetting from all the carbs I had for the last 2 years. So I'm just going to, take a break. But I mean, generally from what I've seen, one glass of, one shot of vodka or tequila or one glass of wine usually doesn't affect people too badly.
There's a few issues that I have with alcohol. I hardly drink, but every once in a while I will have like a nice glass of wine at a dinner, or like a mezcal or tequila, depending on where I am. But I do find that even one glass of alcohol will affect my sleep tremendously. So that is the reason that I really don't drink anymore. And I think if you are going to drink, it's probably better to have it earlier on in the day. Because it's less, day drinking. Just wake up, start drinking. Best time. No, but it is going to affect your sleep less. But from like a fat loss from a gut health perspective, it is going to be detrimental to your microbiome. So that's one thing. But from a fat loss perspective, it is just a good amount of calories, especially most people don't have just like one drink. It is a good amount of calories for not too much nutrition. So that's one thing to consider. And I do feel like also when people drink, they're more likely to then eat more or have more cravings or have a little less willpower. And they're more likely to maybe consume more than they would otherwise. I prefer, like, if I go to it, like I went to a dinner the other night and like, I was like, oh, should I have a wine? But then I'm like, I'd rather have like those calories as good food versus wine. It depends. So it's like, you have to experiment and see if it's going to work for you. But the sleep thing is the biggest issue because sleep is going to affect everything. That's going to affect your gut health. That's going to affect your metabolism. And you might just like feel like crap the whole next day. So
probably not worth it. Yeah.
Weigh the pros and cons.
Yeah. I have experimented with, they usually, if you order wine at a restaurant, they bring out the glass before they bring out the salad or whatever appetizer. And I think drinking on an empty stomach, it is like I interviewed the Z-Biotics guy and he was giving tips on, besides, taking any supplements, what you can do to mitigate alcohol consumption, detrimental effects. And he was saying drinking on an empty stomach, it's going to be absorbed quicker, which is kind of a no-brainer. So like, you don't have to be stuffed, but just have some food in your system and that'll kind of slow the absorption. Right.
And then people tend to like not really feel the effects of the alcohol when they're eating. So then it's like, well, really, what is the point for me? And like sometimes it's like nice to have a nice glass of red wine with like a good steak. So if you're going for the taste, but if you're like going for a little buzz and then you're eating a ton of food and drinking and not feeling it, then it's like really 2 or
3 glasses.
Yeah, exactly. Well then, or have a glass of wine with dinner, have a glass of wine after.
Yeah. It's such an individual thing. It's so interesting. I mean, this is another heated debate where, uh, a lot of people, I think Ben posted like, pro wine, Ben Greenfield posted like a pro dry farm wines post or whatever. And just so much hate. I was like, wow, people are so emotionally charged around alcohol. Like, it's toxic is the latest meme the last few years. And I feel guilty because I use that word. Now I like hate that word. And I'm like, everything's toxic. That's a toxic supplement. That's a toxic substance. It's like,
Well, also like having a glass of wine with good company can be really
could be medicine.
nourishing. Yeah. So it's really the way you look at it and the way you're using it and the way that you're thinking about it, I think plays more of a role than the actual substance itself.
Yeah. And if you drink and you're like cussing out your partner later that night, then yeah, it is toxic. It's like,
yeah, exactly. Right. But if you're enjoying yourself, I think like everything, like with all food too, it's like, if you're enjoying yourself and you're having a positive reaction to it and mindset around it, then it can be really nourishing for you.
Mm-hmm.
Because the stress around not drinking when everybody else is and you want to drink, but then you're like, oh, this is toxic, I shouldn't be drinking. That's going to cause way more issues than just having a glass of wine.
Yeah, maybe even long-term improve your digestion, right? When you like let loose every once in a while.
For sure.
You're not as like tense. Like,
for sure.
This is a good question. How to get started on keto? What are examples of food / meals to eat? And it's funny, someone messaged me today. They're like, I want a Costco food haul, and everyone's interested in like what I eat in a day and, grocery hauls. And to me, that stuff's just so boring now. But
I agree. Yeah. But it's people. Yeah. I think people want just like, people want the guesswork out of it. They don't want to have to experiment. They just want to like people to tell them what to do, which I don't really believe in. In my fat loss course, I have no meal plans. And people are like, do you have meal plans? No, I don't. It's like, I'm going to teach you how you can actually create your own meals and how you could create your own diet that works for you with the things that you like. Because what I like is going to be different than what you like. And like what's growing around me is going to be different than what's growing around you all. And you have access to. So it's like, you have to learn the essentials in order to create that for yourself. What was the question? It was how do you start with keto? Well, I think I don't know that going from like a high carb diet to zero carb or very low carb is probably the smartest thing to do. I think it's probably best to reduce your carbs over time so that you don't really experience the massive change. And I would just say like, I mean, all animal protein is going to be keto except for maybe dairy, right? But I think just sticking to some vegetables that you enjoy and that work for you, that you tolerate well, and animal protein like steak, and making sure that the thing is with when you do take carbs out, you do want to make sure that your fats are going up. So I think this is the issue that a lot of people have, is that they're eating protein, but they're eating leaner proteins and they're not getting enough fat and calories. And then also making sure you're getting enough sodium and electrolytes, because you do tend to not get enough when you're on a low carb diet.
I love that you have no meal plans. That's great. I haven't bought many nutrition books the last couple of years, just like, college textbooks on minerals or vitamins or whatever. And recently I've been going to, health food stores and looking at the library and looking at, Perlmutter's books. I forget the name, the brain books or Mark Hyman's books. And I just flip the pages, and like half the book or 3/4 are like meal plans. I was like, okay, this is going back on the shelf. Right.
Yeah.
Recipes. Yeah. I'm like, how boring. It's like books are like 20% information now and like 80% like recipes. So I wasn't missing out. I'm glad I didn't, buy all these popular books that are out now, like, I don't know, Grain Brain or whatever. It's like,
Well, I think these recipes can be helpful for people who are like maybe just getting started and like just need a place to jump off from. But I do think, well, the reason like I don't have meal plans, I just don't think it's sustainable because you're not going to follow recipes. Most people don't even have the time to make themselves dinner. Like who has the time to follow a recipe? You know, like for every once in a while, like on a weekend, maybe then you experiment with like a fun recipe. But I think the best way to do it is like keeping it simple meals and experimenting and trying things out for yourself, especially with cooking. Baking is a little bit different because that is like a science. But with cooking, you really should like be able to experiment and learn skills and then work off of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I've been doing largely like for dinner, it's either like a filet mignon with
fancy.
Yeah. I love to grill. I mean, up here, I know I've been doing that almost daily, and with roasted bell peppers, and I really like the Primal Kitchen, teriyaki sauce and the different sauces they sell, or salmon with that. And lately I've been loving like the Casandrinos olive oil, which is an easy way to up your fat and calories, just drizzling that over the salmon and steak. That's like a really easy way. Some people put butter on their steak. That's another easy way to do it. But basically just veggies and meat for dinner feels really good on my system, and way better than it did when I used to have, a big thing of rice with it or whatever. And I sleep just as good, if not better. So, but yeah, that's what works for me. So it might not work for you,
Yeah, exactly. I think that is like a good starting point is vegetables and a piece of meat or fish. Or even like eggs are like super quick and easy to make too for some people. But yeah, and if you do want to have some carbs, like, yeah, I mean, rice could be good. I like plantains are really popular here and they grow here. So that's one carb that I will add to my dinner most days, or sweet potatoes. But again, a small amount for the amount of protein that I'm getting.
Did you ever get into the cauliflower rice stuff?
I did, but now it's like, that is like, whenever I see that on a menu, I'm just like, it's the least appealing thing to me.
I'm going to play with it. I just got some, but I imagine if you dress it up with some sauces and stuff or butter.
And people like to do cauliflower and rice, like a mixture, which I think could be good if you tolerate cauliflower well. I would just probably make sure it's cooked very well.
Mm-hmm. This is a good one. What is her opinion on cold therapy and TCM, like how women should remain warm, I guess, most of the time?
It's funny. I wonder if it's the same person. Somebody asked me that question recently. I was actually talking to an acupuncture practitioner here the other day, and we were having this exact conversation because in TCM, it is not like they would not be doing cold therapy at all. I think a lot of the research on cold therapy is like on men. So it is one of these things that we don't really know. I think, again, you have to experiment for yourself. I am a fan of cold therapy, and I think just also depending on what is going on in your life, I did notice for me personally, I went and did cold therapy a few times a few weeks ago, and my HRV just like plummeted.
Wow.
For a good, and my heart rate was high, like based on my Oura ring, and I felt like my sleep was really suffering. And so I wasn't sure if that was it or if it was something else, but I removed it for the week and my HRV came back up and my heart rate went back down. So that could have just been me, but I do think you have to just experiment for yourself and make sure that your recovery is actually helping your recovery, not hindering it.
Yeah, I just interviewed Merrick, and he was saying, he made some really good points on like the state of your nervous system. Like if you're more, let's see if I can get this right, like whether you're sympathetic or parasympathetic, like one of them, cold therapy will get you out of that frozen state. That's what it is. if you're more on the sympathetic side, which generally you'd have lower HRV, according to him, then like an ice bath could, calm you down and increase your HRV if you're stuck in that fight or flight, that sympathetic state. But if you're in a parasympathetic state, cold therapy will make you like deeper parasympathetic, which could get you in the freeze state, I guess, if I'm not butchering what he was saying. And it kind of just made sense.
I think it's one of these things too, is like if you have a lot of stressors in your life, maybe it is probably not the most beneficial thing for you. And yeah, I mean, like a stressor could be good, but if it's too much, then that's not going to be beneficial for you. I mean, I don't know. I do feel like it was helpful for my mood. Like I felt like my mood was amazing, but I did find myself, and maybe this was helping me get into a Paris. I don't know, because I felt great. And it's also super hot here. So it was really nice in terms of just like bringing my body temperature down. But then I was feeling like a few hours later, exhausted, like I wanted to sleep. So, but maybe if I had just let myself rest more instead of like continuing to go on with my day and then working out and walking so much. And the heat, the stress of the heat here too, could have been too much for me. So who knows? But I did find it was really helpful for my mood.
Yeah, you didn't even need to do a sauna, right? There's the hot cold therapy is just getting out of the cold bath.
Yeah, by the time you get to where you're going, you're already sweating again.
Yeah, I started doing it in Southern California at noonday sun, and it's so interesting how, and I've done it both ways, on overcast days and where the sun's beating down on you, and it's so much easier when you're getting infrared light when you're in the cold bath versus when you're in the shade. It's like night and day difference in difficulty. It's insane.
Oh, for sure. Even the other day, it was like kind of just very cloudy here and a bit rainy. And I went to go do it, and it wasn't even that cold. It was probably like 46 or something. And usually it's like 30 something. And it was just so much more of a struggle because it wasn't like the sun wasn't beaming.
Yeah. Well, it's cool that you do the surfing thing. I think that's one of the huge benefits to being in the water, right? Is that temperature difference. And generally you're getting hit with the sun at the same time. That's probably why, beach properties are so expensive and why people crave living there, right? Because you're getting so much free therapy right there just with the temperature effect.
Yeah. And actually the water is fairly warm here in Costa Rica. Except in the early morning, it is like a bit chilly, but I think that is probably I was just like thinking, I was saying to somebody when I was out there, like this is probably the best thing you could do is like get some cold therapy, because you are shivering, especially if you don't have a wetsuit on, but then you're getting the sunrise, you're getting the benefits of being in the salt water, the ocean water, you're getting activity. I think it's probably one of the best things you could do. Definitely. Sunrise surfing.
I used to scuba dive, and even wearing a full wetsuit or a semi-dry suit, there's still a point where the cold water goes down your neck, hits your back and your spine, and then it warms up and you kind of get into a jacuzzi once the water, fills the layer between your suit and your skin. But you're still getting cold therapy even if you're diving. And I remember being down at like 60 feet, and the longer you're down there, you definitely get a chill going.
Yeah. It's definitely not my favorite thing, being cold.
How can I truly kill my sugar cravings? Someone asked.
I don't necessarily think like we need to completely distinguish or like completely kill our sugar cravings. I think we need to just be able to manage them. I created a recipe book that's just sweets that's made with real sugar. So I think these things can be beneficial. We have to have them in a very smart way. So in my recipes, they're high protein as well as there's sugar in it, but they're also high protein. We do want to have our sweets after we've had a meal. We don't want to have those on an empty stomach. But I think there's a few things like getting enough protein in general throughout the day is probably one of the best things you can do for sugar cravings. I think this is why people have sugar cravings, because they're not getting enough protein, especially in that first meal of the day. Like I recommend having at least like 40 grams of protein in your morning meal. And what I have found with students in my courses and my clients is like, if they do that, their like they just don't care about sugar. And I've noticed this with myself. I have like a nice protein rich meal, and then I go to the cafe and there's like just like the most amazing pastries there. I just am like, yeah, okay, those look good, but I don't really care. But if I don't have that and I go in there, I'm going to be like just craving them. So protein, making sure that you're getting enough fat too is really helpful for that. And then I think managing your stress, because a lot of people tend to crave sugar in the evenings. And that is the time when like maybe they're not so busy and they can't really distract themselves from what's going on in their heads and their heart, soul. So figuring out ways to, deal with that: meditation, breath work, journaling, talking things out, feeling your feelings are really important too. And moving, like just moving, working out, taking a walk.
I love it. And there are it's fun to play around with the keto products. I know they get a lot of hate because there's so much marketing, but some of them are actually good. I was at Costco yesterday. They have I think it's the Franz brands, like keto bread, keto's in big words. And then you look at the ingredients, it's like canola oil, hydrogenated, like
oh my
30
God, yeah.
ingredients. So just because something says keto on it, obviously it's not healthy, but there are some good products and, chocolate where instead of using cane sugar, they're using monk fruit or whatever. And I've had some amazing, like Reese's peanut butter style, like cups, I think like keto cups is one where it's like almond butter with like,
oh
MCT.
yeah. From Evolved, right? Yeah. Those are good too. Yeah.
As long as you don't eat the whole bag, right?
Well, that's the thing. So I think a lot of people, when they have those, because they're quote unquote sugar free or keto, they tend to feel like they can just
binge.
Have as many, exactly, which it's probably not going to be beneficial. But yeah, you can even like sometimes like what I do if I really am like having a craving is like I'll mix like protein powder, like cacao powder, a little stevia, and like some kind of milk, raw milk, coconut milk, and have that. And that is like enough, a little coconut butter is also one of those, like it has a bit of sweetness to it. That can be really nice too in something. So finding alternatives to having the sugar, because I do think the more sugar you have, the more you do crave it.
This is a specific one. A1C goals for fertility. So hemoglobin A1C, like that's like what supposedly the last 3 months, average of your sugar intake, and what is it, glycosylated hemoglobin. I have an at-home test. I really have to do it because I'm curious. I feel like I'm still transitioning. I feel amazing, but I was so high carb that intuitively I feel like it's really high. But I guess we could just say like your general thoughts on the A1C test, if you think it's worth doing or useful. Or
I do think it's useful. I think like, your fasting blood sugar and your A1C, like looking at everything is probably a good place to start. But I think you have to work with a good practitioner, because I think a lot of people are doing their own blood tests and then like making assumptions and based on that, when I think you have to like look at the whole picture of everything else that's going on.
Yeah. And like fasting insulin's another one, right, to look at.
Yeah.
Let's see. Someone asked, are sugar cravings just a sign of mineral deficiencies? I think that's a meme that goes around.
Oh my God. I don't think so. I think it could be a sign of a lot of things. It could be a sign that you're not eating enough, not getting enough protein. Could be a sign that it's also stress can increase your sugar cravings. And like we just talked about, like a lot of times we crave sugar when we're craving comfort.
Makes sense. Yeah. And I like your idea of letting loose every once in a while. I think my older brother was sad when I said I was keto, because And then I showed him my blood sugar. My fasting blood sugar the other day was like 83, or no, that was actually after a meal, a few hours after. So like I'm starting to stabilize instead of my average being like 100, like it was for the last few months. It's starting to slowly go down. And he's like, "Good, you cured your diabetes. Now you can have birthday cake again."
It's like, go back to the thing that caused your illness to begin with. So it's a good idea.
I imagine using these sugar substitutes, you could actually make desserts taste good, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, like, is it going to kill you if you have like a dessert here and there? Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, I think it's what you do. I think it's what you do the majority of the time.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most important thing, and not what you do every once in a while.
And the activity level, like you were saying too, right? Like if you have a birthday cake, but then you go on a walk afterwards, it's going to be different.
Yeah. And have the birthday cake with some protein,
Mm-hmm.
have protein, even like, a great hack if you're going to do something like that is having a whey protein shake, maybe 15, 30 minutes before you have that sugar, and then have that. And that is going to help balance out your blood sugar so much more. So if I go like out, for pizza or to go have a dessert, or if I if I really want a pastry, I'll have a protein shake first, and then I'll go eat the pastry, and and then take a walk after or before.
Wow. And if you noticed have you seen your glucose stabilize doing that?
Yeah, much more so than just having the pastry, for sure.
Wow. Let's see. I think we kind of talked about this, but kind of dive into it a little more. Best ways to lose weight with low thyroid and adrenal burnout susceptibility.
Okay. Well, I think it's going to, I go into full detail of this in my course, especially with thyroid issues, but I think it's going to be the same for anybody who's trying to lose weight. You want to have an effective workout program, number one. So especially if you are prone to adrenal issues, you want to stay away from like the intense cardio, the circuit training, the little rest in between sets. I recommend like going like in a shorter rep range when you're lifting, and then longer rest periods. That's going to be really helpful for your thyroid and also for any susceptibility to adrenal issues. And making sure that you are getting, in order to lose weight, you want to be in a deficit, but you want to make sure that the foods that you are eating are high in nutrients, especially nutrients for your thyroid. So I tend to think like, we want to make sure we're getting enough iodine. Nori is great for that, seafood, and just getting like these nutrient dense foods from like animal-based products. So like steaks and good dairy, again, seafood. These things are going to be helpful rather than just like cutting calories.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys have oysters out there where you're at, Costa Rica?
It's weird. It's really hard to find them here, but it's one of my favorite things. There's like one restaurant that has them for some reason. I'm not sure. Maybe they just like, I don't really know how it works. Maybe they just like aren't available here.
Interesting.
I don't really, yeah. Or it's just hard to get for some reason.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of zinc and iodine supplementation, but especially zinc. And lately I've been eating more oysters, maybe twice a week instead of once a week, and about a dozen at a time. And I feel so good. I wonder if it's in my head, but after just eating one or two oysters, it's like 30 seconds to a minute later, I'm feeling like this brain buzz. And I'm like, is it going through my mucous membranes transdermally, like the zinc or something? But I always feel like tingling sensation in my brain, which to me is a good sign. Hopefully.
I think oysters, especially if you have thyroid issues, like oysters are great. Liver, organ meats.
Mm-hmm. Are you because I guess that's another, heated, fear topic right now is liver. vitamin A toxicity if you have liver every day. And some people say no more than once a week. I know for my genetics on self-decode, I have higher vitamin A requirements based on my SNP mutations. So, and I definitely feel the difference. Like if I don't supplement a vitamin A source, I don't have as much energy.
Mm. Yeah. So again, it's going to be individual. Like I know I have a friend who has liver and feels awful. Like she just does not feel good when she has it. So I'm like, yeah, okay, well, then you don't have it, right? But I think, yeah, like I don't know that it's beneficial to be eating liver every day, but probably at least once a week, a little bit. Or if you're going to have like a good amount for the week, then maybe like take the next week off. You don't need to be eating it every single day.
Mm-hmm. Let's see, maybe only one or two more here. What about guidelines for women in perimenopause?
Yeah. So it is going to, like, in terms of fat loss. So this was, yeah, it is going to be similar again. I think your metabolism is probably going to slow down. So there's a few things you can do. In increasing your movement is going to be really helpful. Also making sure you're getting enough protein, of course. But as you age, we actually need more protein. So increasing your protein when you are going into perimenopause or menopause. And then also, again, lifting. And I would probably suggest the same thing in terms of like, if you're dealing with thyroid issues or adrenal issues, is doing heavier weights and more rest periods rather than kind of like pushing in terms of cardio. And yeah, I mean, a caloric deficit. So your metabolism might be, also depends, like, especially I find too, women who are going to perimenopause or menopause tend to have slower metabolisms. And this can be because they've yo-yo dieted for a long time, which actually slows down your metabolism. So we can be like heavier and have more weight to lose and actually have a slower metabolism. So one thing that I have found helpful for people going to perimenopause or menopause is almost like reverse dieting them. So increasing their calories while we try to keep their weight stable in order to speed up their metabolism. And then you can work on getting into a caloric deficit from there once we have built up your metabolism. And I find that works really well for menopausal and perimenopausal women.
Interesting. I think you're a fan of saunas. Like, have you heard of, a lot of people use this for weight loss, but how it's supposedly equivalent, like you burn the same amount of calories as if you were to do an aerobic exercise. Obviously it's different, but you can actually create like a caloric deficit just with using a sauna daily.
Interesting. I mean, I'm a fan of saunas. I think it's like great for detox. Because your heart rate, I mean, if it's hot enough, your heart rate is increasing. So I can see that being beneficial. So if you have the time to do that, for sure.
Yeah. I just was reading too, like, I guess women have, I think it's less sweat glands. And so basically, and definitely at different times in a woman's cycle, your temperature tolerance goes like way up.
Oh, interesting.
Which is kind of interesting. So like even the black panel, standard infrared saunas, I think those only go up to like 140 Fahrenheit. That might not be hot enough sometimes for a woman, depending on where she's at. I can't remember which part in the cycle, but at certain times in your cycle, I don't know if you've experienced as a woman, but you can handle heat a lot more.
It's not something that I've thought about, but now that you bring that to my attention, maybe I will, maybe I will notice a difference.
Maybe the last one here, L-glutamine. Did you utilize that when you were healing your gut health? Or
that can be really helpful for the gut lining. I tend to, I think it can be really nice, especially in addition or instead of colostrum, which I think is probably the most beneficial supplement for healing the gut lining. And I think probably everybody could benefit from that.
Mm-hmm. Do you do the powder or the capsules or both? Or?
I like the powder because I like to let it sit under my tongue and let it melt under my tongue rather than just like ingesting it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's really good for oral health, right?
Oh, interesting. Colostrum. I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think with the microbes, or there's studies on that for like the gums and stuff. That's been a fun thing I've been diving into lately, the high carb thing. And my experience has been high carb definitely didn't help my teeth and gums.
I could see that. Yep.
But, well, this was awesome. I think we covered a lot of ground, and, I like your focus on keeping it simple, because I have shows where like dive it in and it's like pedal to the metal, balls to the wall, like studies and like, deep science, and this is the mechanism. But I think some people, like you said, just need to know the basics and, not making it overly complicated. And yeah, I think some people like the complex and super nerdy stuff, but I like how you break it down.
I think there's a time and a place to get complex, but I think for most people, can benefit from keeping things as simple as possible, because I think there is so much noise and people just like don't know where to go or what to do. And I think like bringing it back to the foundations, like getting nutrient dense, real food, getting enough protein, making sure you have an effective workout program, balancing your circadian rhythm. And then when you have all those things locked in, then you can get more complex.
Mm-hmm. I love it. rawfitnessandnutrition.com is your website. So you have, what do you have on there? Courses, coaching, recipes?
Yeah. I have a few free guides. If anybody's interested, you can download those there. I have 2 courses, a Fat Loss 101 course that I just redid, and then a Gut Health 101 course, and then a protein bakes recipe book.
Awesome.
And I do coaching, but I don't do very much of it these days.
Okay. I like your shop too. Even though there's no Mitolife on there, I'm not judging, but you actually inspired me to order the Lucy gum, because I've seen that I think from Luke and a couple other people, and big cigar fan, but like the 2 milligrams of nicotine at certain times, if I'm feeling a little sluggish and I'm out and about, it's incredible, especially at the airport. That's where I used it recently when I was traveling, and just kind of kept me alert and feeling good. And
I mean, sometimes it can be too much, like, but I really like to use it. I tend to use it before, it's like as a pre-workout. And wow. I feel like it really gets me going. But it's also really nice for like focus as well. And I only use I think it's like 2 milligrams. I think what I have is the 4 milligrams. So I really only do like a half a piece, which is kind of perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nicotine's I mean, there's so many components to tobacco where it's not the only benefit, but, for the acetylcholine, mimicking effects, it has, benefits for dopamine, mitochondrial benefits. I think nicotine stabilizes mitochondria, especially if you're in EMF rich environment. So many uses for it. And a lot of people don't want to smoke. So it's like, okay, here's an alternative. And I've tried the patches, the nicotine patches, and didn't feel much from them. So my neighbor does the tobacco chew, but I'll never do that. It's kind of intense.
Yeah, I've really been enjoying the Lucy gum, and I know they have like little can't, like, I don't know, what are they like? They're not chewables, is what I want to say, but they're like little candies, I guess, too. It's like they have all kinds of different ones now. But I prefer the gum. Yeah, like little tablets that you can just like suck on, and they have a bunch of different things now.
Awesome. Oh yeah, you have keto. Yeah, you have keto chocolate on there. Addictive Wellness. I think I met that couple when I was down there, like LA area or whatever.
Yeah, they're great, and those chocolates are amazing, and they really care about the product, so it's like top notch.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Oh, and colonics. I forgot to ask you about that. I see at the end. Do you still use that with clients or personally, or because I've only done it once, but I could see
Really?
like
I'm surprised,
I
actually.
know I mostly hit the coffee enemas and the ozone enemas. That was my thing. But I mean, from observation, I guess you can overdo it. If you do it daily for years, I've seen that. Um, but uh, colonics seem to be super beneficial. I mean, the colon hydrotherapist, it was down in San Diego area. She said she's seen crazy stuff, because there's a little window. You can
Hmm.
see the little stuff flying through. And she's like, I've seen, Chiquita banana stickers flying through there. I've seen like worms, like you name it,
Wow.
coming out
I
of people.
think I think they can be overused. I think people like somebody asked me about it recently and I was like, well, what do you want to do it for? And they're like, for weight loss. I'm like, that's not why you do it. It's like and again, it's like an extra thing. It's an addition. If you really want to do it, I think it can be helpful for some people. Um, but I don't think it's going to cure you of anything. I think it can be just like a nice addition. And coffee enemas are great too, like especially for liver support. I think you can do those at home. I think those are great as well.
Hmm. Yeah. When was the last colonic you've had? Again, personal.
Um, I got a colonic probably like two years ago or so now.
Okay. I think I was like 7 or 8 years ago. Probably overdue. But what would be your protocol now if you were to do one? Like, would it be fast the day before or something, or doesn't matter?
I would probably just fast the day. Well, I think what I did in the past is I just fasted the day of,
Mm.
and I would eat normally the day before, but I wouldn't eat anything crazy or hard on my digestion for me personally. So yeah, I think I just like would eat normally.
Mm. It was a wild feeling. I mean, I walked out of there and I almost felt high, like the mental clarity. It was like colors were like brighter and like crisper. It was almost like I was seeing in like HD. Like after, I don't know, maybe I had some candida or something that was kind of fogging up my vision. I don't know.
I mean, you do really feel really good, really light, really clean after you leave there. I do remember some days it being really challenging, like it was really uncomfortable. And then other days it was like completely fine. So again, I think it just depends on your health in the moment.
Interesting. Yeah. I want to do an experiment where I like take a ton of antiparasitics for a cycle and then go and do one and see what happens.
I think that's a good idea. Yeah.
Mhm.
And like biofilm disruptors to make sure you're like killing things. I think that's probably when to do it, is also when you're like detoxing and trying to get rid of things. It'll probably just help assist that whole process.
Mm-hmm. Spring cleaning. Awesome, Amanda. Well, this was really fun. And you said Instagram's your main gig.
Instagram is where I spend most of my time. I also have a newsletter that I tried to send out some valuable things on as well, but that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, stick around as we close it out. That wraps up today's show. I really like Amanda's approach. It's really practical. It's if you are in a calorie deficit, then you will lose weight. Adequate protein consumption, some type of a movement practice, especially for blood sugar regulation, but also, she said, just as an empowering tool. I really like the point she made that your metabolism could be suboptimal even if you're thin. When I started getting into reading my blood glucose and seeing these giant frequent spikes and elevated fasting blood glucose, I was quite shocked, because when I think of those issues, I think of overweight and obese people, and I have a very thin frame. So to have this marker of suboptimal metabolism, which is blood sugar regulation, it was a shocker. And I think most people, when they think of diabetics, they think of excess body fat, but that is not always the case. So if you're interested in working with Amanda, her website is rawfitnessandnutrition.com. She has a great program. She has a great shop. I always like checking out the shops of the people that I interview. And I think it's really cool that she has the nicotine gum on there. I'd heard about it from a few friends and finally decided to try it out. And it's such a great tool for driving. Where I currently live, it's very rural. It's very long drives to get anywhere. And nicotine improves motor function. So it really helps, to me, more than caffeine with long drives. So check that out on her shop and check out her program. It's really great. She's helping a lot of women. My website is matt-blackburn.com. I have my CLF protocol up there, which stands for calcification, lipofuscin, and fibrosis. And those are 3 accumulations that we get over our lifetime that accelerate aging, especially lipofuscin. That is exactly correlated to your biological age. But the fun thing about this protocol is I'm constantly learning. Like with the vitamin D thing, that was a huge debate the last few years, and some people are saying it's toxic, and then other people are saying it's medicine. And what about the balance? That's very rare. So that's where I've achieved the balance in between, where it can be a poison for some people and it could be a medicine for many people as well. And I actually added that nuance there into my article. And my company is called Mitolife. You can find that at mitolife.co. We just released the 7-stage water solution. This is an under-counter water filtration unit. I think the best in the world. This is 3 years in the making. Blood, sweat, and tears went into this project. Truly a labor of love. Not private labeled, built from scratch, open source, customizable, very easy to maintenance. Every so often, you're going to have to switch the cartridges out. And it's just a simple twist off instead of flooding the floor like I've done several times. And it's really a mess and a hassle to replace the filters on other units. So this is a do-it-yourself unit. Once it's installed by a professional plumber, very easy and effective. Whenever you purchase any product from Mitolife, a portion of it goes to Deliver Fund, a nonprofit private intelligence organization that addresses the issue of human trafficking in the U.S. by targeting traffickers using artificial intelligence and local law enforcement agents. So it feels really good to support that cause. I've gone as deep as you can down the rabbit hole of figuring out what's going on here on this planet before I got into health. And to me, that is the number one issue. If I could snap my fingers and end anything, more than microplastics, more than anything else in the world, it would be that. So really honored to support them. That is all for today's show. I will see you guys next Friday. Stay supercharged.